The world was rocked by the terrible death of 6-year-old beauty queen JonBenet Ramsey 28 years ago. Her murder, which was discovered in her family cellar, is still one of the most eerie and unresolved cases in American history. Burke Ramsey, her brother who was just 9 years old at the time, has not spoken up until now. Burke has finally come forward after decades of secrecy and conjecture, and what he says is shocking everyone. Could his remarks ultimately reveal the truth about JonBenet's death, and why did he wait so long? Come along as we reveal the true cause of the endearing kid star's demise. When the Ramsey family's holiday season devolved into a nightmare in December 1996, it all began. JonBenet Ramsey, age 6, was found dead in her Boulder's basement on December 26. Her life was brutally cut short at home in Colorado. After an autopsy, it was discovered that she had a broken skill and a strangulation device embedded in her neck, along with a garrote. The peculiar aspect was the ransom note that was left behind, claiming that she had been abducted and requesting $118,000 to return her, even though her body had been in the house the entire time. A serious issue arose after her father, John Ramsey, shockingly found her death in the basement. The family was the target of suspicion. There was a lot of conjecture because of the strange ransom note that demanded $118,000 and a bonus that John Ramsey had received, in addition to the lack of evidence of forced entry. The Ramseys were targeted in their own house because the crime scene was not adequately guarded and the media was pursuing them. However, the Ramseys were exonerated of any participation in 2006 due to important DNA evidence. When JonBenet's clothing was discovered to have genetic material from an unidentified male, the focus of the inquiry shifted to the potential for an intruder. Even though the parents were cleared, no suspect was found. Nocha. Burke Ramsey, the brother of JonBenet Ramsey, gained notoriety 28 years later when he abruptly broke his silence, leaving everyone stunned. Over the years, he declined to participate in any documentary or interview. He didn't even take part in the recent Netflix documentary series that examined the JonBenet Ramsey case. Making his first public remarks since the tragedy, he shockingly agreed to a 3-party interview on Dr. Phil. He responded, "If the story is going to be told, I want to tell it," when asked why he had finally made the decision to speak up after being silent for over 30 years. "I would rather share my own narrative than have others talk about me." He answered a variety of questions from Dr. Phil regarding the incident, illuminating the startling events of that period. When questioned if he utilized a flashlight or bat during the event, his response was completely nonsensical. He disclosed that he believed his sister was only hiding and that he remained in bed. When she wasn't there, he also described the police interrogations. As might be expected from a 9-year-old, he was rather anxious and perplexed during the interview, which occasionally made him smile in the worst moments. He was simply nervous, but the police mistook this for guilt. Dr. Phil probed deeply during the conversation. He went over the 9/11 call recordings with Burke, talked about why he stayed in bed while his family and the police were downstairs, and even went back to the time Burke discovered his sister was dead rather than simply hiding. He recalled that all he needed to start crying was for his father to inform him that she was in heaven. Additionally, some previously unseen interrogation videos were made public by the Dr. Phil programs. It made clear Burke's reaction as a scared youngster, and he now has the courage to openly address the rumors and speculations he has been subjected to for years. This interview's publication expanded the discussion to 3 options. Burke did it, Ramseys did it, and Intruder did it. Burke stated in the interview that he has seen a lot of online hypotheses and rumors accusing him of being guilty, but he wanted to correct the record. However, why were the police so certain that the Ramseys would harm their own young daughter in such a cruel way? The most widely held theory following the discovery of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey killed in the basement of her family's Colorado house was that the Ramseys were responsible. Families, friends, and police were wandering about the house freely at the initial chaotic crime scene, which tainted important evidence. John discovered the body hours after phoning the police, but they were suspected for other reasons. JonBenet's mother, Patsy, discovered a 2.5-page ransom note demanding $118,000 just before she filed a missing persons report. The father's Christmas bonus was near John. It was written by hand from inside the house on paper. Furthermore, the ransom note appeared to have come from inside the house, and there were no indications of forced entry. Suspicion of the family started at that point. More concerning indications were observed by investigators. The infant was strangled with a garrote that looked like it was made from a paintbrush handle that was discovered in the house. There were questions raised when Patsy's handwriting test findings on the ransom note were unclear. Police deduced that the perpetrator was already inside the house or knew it because there were no signs of forced entry or snow-covered footsteps. The fact that her father found JonBenét's body only made things worse. She was taken upstairs by John Ramsey, who unintentionally disturbed the scene and perhaps destroyed important forensic evidence, a move that numerous specialists later denounced as a disastrous mistake. In the early days, the Ramseys restricted police access to the house and hired powerful attorneys and public relations gurus just hours before the event. They appeared evasive and defensive due to their refusal to cooperate with the cops. They appeared to be concealing something. Despite their sympathy, the police started to concentrate on the Ramseys as the primary suspects. The police felt justified in concentrating their investigation on the family rather than searching for other suspects because of the family's conduct and other supporting facts. Making the stick, however, proved challenging. For starters, there was no hard proof that the Ramseys killed JonBenet. It was all confused because the family had no reason to wish to harm their daughter. Did you know that 9-year-old Burke was one of the suspects? The police would eventually unearth evidence that cleared the parents. Despite keeping a low profile during his youth and after the tragedy, Burke Ramsey, JonBenét's brother, has long been a suspect and a focus of conjecture among true crime theorists. The Ramsey family returned to Atlanta after the murder, where Burke, who was still a youngster at the time, avoided the spotlight while his parents gave multiple interviews in which they defended themselves and called for more research. The whole Ramsey family, including Burke and the late Patsy, was formally exonerated by the Boulder District Attorney in 2008 after DNA evidence from JonBenet's clothing revealed an unidentified guy who was not related. Mary Lacey then apologized for adding to the public's mistrust. Burke testified before a grand jury in 1999 and was examined by investigators at least 3 times, according to the court documents. He was not regarded as a suspect, according to officials. Tests of his handwriting and DNA revealed that they did not match the evidence obtained at the crime scene. The Burke did it theory was resurrected in 2016 by the CBS documentary series The Case of JonBenet Ramsey, which suggested that a manufactured ransom note followed a boyhood mishap that turned deadly. Burke responded by suing for $750 million in defamation, but he reached a silent settlement in 2019. Burke made his sole public appearance on Dr. Phil shortly before the premiere of this documentary series, and he categorically denied any involvement in his sister's passing. He believes that the person who killed her was an intruder, perhaps from her pageant world. However, because he feels the police handled it poorly, he was unable to deny that they contributed to the delay of the investigation. What problems did the investigation have? The Boulder Police Department handled the scene of the gruesome murder of 6-year-old JonBenet with surprising carelessness. The house was not guarded, even though a ransom note indicated a severe crime. Instead, non-essential police, acquaintances, and family members were given free rein, contaminating important evidence such as fingerprints, footprints, and perhaps DNA before it could be properly gathered. Police neglected to conduct a comprehensive search of the entire house, including the subterranean wine cellar where JonBenét's body was found. By misunderstanding the duties of the police and the victim's relatives, the lone investigator on the scene even instructed John Ramsey to begin looking for her in the house. As a distraught parent, John carried his daughter up in tears and terror after he eventually found her body himself. As he relocated the body and took off the duct tape, this totally upended the crime scene. Later, retired Boulder Chief Mark Beckner acknowledged that the initial reaction was terrible. He observed that there was no control over the scene. It took 5 months for the family to be separated and for their statements to be collected. The storm was beautiful. Staffing shortages during the holidays, misunderstandings of new procedures, and social pressures all contributed to inaction and careless management. Similar criticism has been expressed by well-known individuals such as former homicide detective Joe Kenda and FBI agent Ron Walker. Walker referred to the poor management as catastrophic, claiming that appropriate evidence collecting was impeded by departmental leadership and mindset. Kenda stated rather plainly that the case was irreversibly damaged from the beginning and that the situation was destroyed. Incompetence was even evident in the documentation. According to Lieutenant Linda Arndt's official report, JonBenet's body was moved several times before preservation measures were implemented, occasionally at her father's request, jeopardizing the chance of a controlled forensic investigation. To make things worse, a lot of information was leaked to the media, which resulted in intense media scrutiny. A lot of misleading information was circulating, such as the untrue claims that Patsy refused to provide her DNA or reveal John's whereabouts. Bad news about the family was disseminated by the media as a result, which sparked intense media attention. Coverage of JonBenet Ramsey's murder swiftly shifted from journalism to television's unrelenting trial. Cable news networks and tabloids obsessively examined the case with scant proof, concentrating more on crazy speculations and boosting ratings than facts, with the Ramsey family becoming its primary and frequently unfair focus. The Ramseys, particularly Patsy, were also presented to the public as guilty through programs such as Geraldo Rivera's fictitious courtroom. The distinction between entertainment and justice was becoming blurred by these theatrical portions, which lacked evidence. The family was ridiculed by tabloids, who claimed that JonBenet was coerced into competing in beauty pageants by Patsy and that John had engaged in wrongdoing. However, these accusations were ultimately shown to be untrue. Burke's every motion and response during interviews and interrogations was scrutinized, drawing him into the media frenzy even at the age of 9. It makes sense why it took him 28 years to publicly discuss the case. Sensationalism also benefited from clinical blunders. Details that were magnified and used as proof against the world included the ransom notes matching bonus and the absence of forcible entrance. Even more, the ethics of the media were criticized in spite of the ambiguous facts. Michael Tracy and other seasoned journalists denounced the sensationalist tactics that demonized innocent people, calling the coverage a media assassination and a public lynching. When the DNA evidence was made public, all of the speculation and scrutiny eventually subsided. However, who is the murderer if such is the case? All Ramseys were definitively ruled out when forensic experts took a mixed male DNA profile from JonBenet's underwear in December 2003. Despite being put into Cody's, that profile did not match any database users. However, more thorough testing by 2016 revealed that the original male DNA was actually a combination of several people. Undergarments and ligature materials were among the profiles discovered in multiple locations, indicating that a stranger rather than family members may have been involved. This helped to deflect suspicion from the family, but it also created a new issue because the police were still unable to identify the CA. Important artifacts, including as the garrote that was used to strangle his daughter, were sent for testing in early 1997, but returned untested. According to Jon Ramsey, he still doesn't understand why DNA testing hasn't been done on these objects. The Boulder Police Department has not authorized testing on the available DNA samples to identify the murderer, despite the progress made since 2018. Given how much technology has changed since then, JonBenet's family has been putting pressure on the police to retest the DNA. Even John Andrew Ramsey, JonBenet's other brother, believes they could have apprehended the murderer far sooner. John Andrew, JonBenet Ramsey's half-brother, stated in a recent interview that this case is solvable. He feels that the community turned against his family and that the government isn't doing enough. What happened to my family, what happened to JonBenet, and what happened to the community as a whole is wrong, he said. They are ultimately in charge of identifying the murderer, and we want them to do so. This 6-year-old girl was killed while under their supervision. He claims that he is still driven to track down the person who killed his younger sister. However, he continues to urge the investigators to improve their work for JonBenet's benefit. I believe it's crucial that people realize that this case can be resolved, he stated. There is a narrative that says we should just accept the fact that this is an unsolved killing. Furthermore, that is untrue. We will track down this murderer if we use the evidence and adhere to the facts. He recalled the day he learned of the death of JonBenet Ramsey. He wanted to visit his father's relatives, therefore he was leaving Atlanta, where he was spending the holidays with his mother and sister. Then he received a message telling him to phone his family. He had never anticipated the startling call. John talked more about his sister and the effect on the family than Burke, who rarely made public appearances. In 2020, he said, JonBenet was the child who kept the dinner table talk going. She was a lively and entertaining child who would ask everyone how their day was going and what they had done. He also disclosed the problems his family faced. They lost their first sibling, Beth, in a terrible automobile accident, and Patsy had stage 4 cancer. They were already experiencing a range of emotions, so they never imagined that such a thing could occur again. He did not anticipate, however, that everyone would turn against them and accuse them of killing their youngest daughter. Their family's predicament worsened as a result of the media spreading the rumors. After a decade of defending themselves against accusations, John and Patsy Ramsey were not released until the new DNA evidence surfaced. We lost both our sister and our daughter, he remarked. The Ramsey family is still fighting in spite of everything that has happened to them. The lawsuit is still pending nearly 30 years after JonBenet was murdered in 1996, and her father, John Ramsey, is still steadfastly pursuing justice. After years of feeling blocked, he visited with Stephen Redfern, Boulder's new police chief, in January 2025 and expressed newfound hope. He was struck by Chief Redfern's transparency and leadership, which gave him new hope. In 1998, unreleased interview tapes with Patsy and John Ramsey were made public. This demonstrated that rather than seeking out additional hints or suspects, prosecutors were looking for discrepancies in their statements. It appears that the investigators missed a lot of additional pieces of evidence because of their limited attention to the parents. According to John Ramsey, important pieces of evidence like the blanket, ransom note, and homemade garrote have never been subjected to contemporary DNA testing. He has supported his requests with meetings with the DA, the police, and even lawmakers. He contends that Boulder Police Department has refused to use cutting-edge genetic genealogy procedures that were essential in solving cases like the Golden State Killer. Boulder Police Department teamed up with the Colorado Cold Case Review Team in November 2022. Since then, they have created a searchable database, digitized thousands of tips and interviews, and inventoried 2,500 pieces of evidence. Chief Redfern publicly stated that all feasible avenues, including DNA testing, are being investigated as part of his ongoing commitment. John is still frustrated in spite of these attempts. Persuaded that new DNA testing could reveal JonBenet's killer, he has petitioned the governor of Colorado to step in and provide evidence to independent labs. These unproven products were further highlighted and received fresh public attention in the most recent Netflix documentary series. The Ramsey boys are continuing working on creating a happy existence, despite the fact that the family has been searching for the murderer. With a degree in computer technology from Purdue University, Burke, now 37, leads a peaceful existence in Michigan as a software developer. Prior to and following his interview with Dr. Phil, he consistently avoided being in the media. Citing unjust media treatment in the past and internet rumors, he also declined to appear in Netflix's 2024 documentary series. In the recent Netflix documentary series, John Andrew, the older half-brother of the Ramseys who is currently in his 50s, defended his father, John, and stepmother, Patsy, while also attacking the Boulder police. He has been an outspoken supporter of his sister's cause. Everyone believed that the family would be relieved when the DNA evidence in 2008 showed that John and Patsy Ramsey were innocent. But the murderer had not been apprehended, and Patsy had tragically died. 5 years after Patsy's death and 15 years after John, then 67, married Las Vegas fashion designer John Russo in Charlevoix, Michigan, in July 2011. Born and raised in East Africa, Jan, who had 2 grown kids, thought John was innocent. They lived together as a blended family in Michigan and, occasionally, Utah. Do you believe that justice will ever be done, or do you believe that too much time and harm have gone for their family to ever identify the murderer? Tell us in the comment section. We appreciate your time and hope to see you again soon.